Before I start, actually, I'll do like just maybe 2 minutes of intro. First intro is, of course, thanks to the amazing TBDJ technical team, who not only seems to manage to put an entire shul online, but even figured out how to help us manage to get normal Wi-Fi in my house, which we will all be celebrating if we can actually all be on our various Zooms during the day without it crashing. That would be most exciting. So they even helped us with that. So thank you to all the tech people. Thank you, thank you. And really, the only reason why this is happening is because of Adina Moss. So a huge thank you to Adina, who knows a few things about me, one of which is if she asks me to do something, I won't say no. So if you ever need anything, I probably won't say no to you either, but I really can't say no to Adina. So when she said, we need to do something for the women and we haven't had something, just kind of a check-in on how everybody's doing. Let's see each other's faces. Let's talk about maybe some of the things that we're all trying to juggle, balance, manage, etc. And it just sounded like a really good idea. So that's how this came to be. So a huge thank you to Adina. I also just want to call everyone's attention as we're gathering, call everyone's attention to the amazing program that is kicking off tomorrow night in honor of Mental Health Awareness Month, I think in May. Yeah, Mental Health Awareness Month. Our shul is very blessed to have some amazing, amazing volunteers. And one of them, a real doer, Dr. Rachel Goodman-Aspler, who has really thrown herself into making sure that our community not just acknowledges, but really learns and connects to all the different challenges that people are facing now more than ever, but clearly something that we all know has been an issue facing us, our families, and our communities for quite some time. And thank God now it is really getting the attention and the focus that it deserves. So Mental Health Awareness Month is kicking off at our shul tomorrow night with a lecture from Dr. Norman Blumenthal, who is a world-renowned psychologist and therapist who advises many institutions. You'll hear much more about him tomorrow night, but I really encourage everyone who is here to make sure to log in tomorrow night and to check the shul Facebook page or website to see all the other opportunities you may have to be able to learn from someone like him. On that note, it is a little intimidating to talk about something like relationships when I think that many of you have a lot to teach the rest of us, much more than I do. In fact, I was talking to my mother earlier today. I don't know if she's on or not, but when she told me she was going to log on, I said, Mommy, you can't log on to hear me talk about relationships. You're the one who teaches, like, you should be giving this class, not me. So of course she laughed and said all the right mommy things that mommies are supposed to say. So if she's on, hi mommy. Very blessed to be able to check in with her every day, even if I can't see her face to face. I know that that is a gift that I have. So on the note of someone like Dr. Norman Blumenthal, who really has so much to teach all of us in the realm of mental health and relationships, it feels a little uncomfortable for me to delve into something so complex and something that requires really so many years of training and knowledge. So really everything I'm going to share with you tonight is from a lot of reading and a lot of listening that I have done from people who are qualified to share this information, because I certainly didn't feel that I was. So I will try whenever I remember to quote the people by name. But I've had an amazing opportunity really since Adina and I first spoke about this, but even a little bit earlier, Yeshiva University Center for Jewish Future has done a really incredible job. They always are looking to support rabbis, shul rabbis and rebbitzins. And some of you may know that I attend every year. They do like a 2-day conference for shul rebbitzins, which is like the most fun 48 hours for many of us. They just give us amazing opportunities to socialize, but most importantly, really to study and learn and grow, think about things we can do to help our communities and strengthen each other. And one of the things they've been doing since the whole COVID-19 corona situation began, and because many of the rebbitzins are based in the New York area, whereas we know in North America, it really hit there, at least in the Jewish community, hit there first. And they have done an extraordinary job of providing us with almost weekly calls with mental health professionals who are guiding us for our own selves. So it was, you know, many of the things I've listened to were really geared for myself. And so I'm going to share with you, I think, the things that resonated most with me and things I've seen repeated over and over again. Those tend to be the things that I find are sticking. So those are some of the things that I'd like to share. But with that being said, anything that makes no sense or sounds off, that's my fault, not the people that I'm quoting. Okay, so with that as a little bit of a backdrop, let's get started. So again, it's great to see everyone. Thank you for joining. I think it is safe to say that we are all in various stages of woe or various stages of or as my husband referred in his speech, Rosh Hashanah this year, right? Various stages of meh. We are all juggling and trying to manage many things. One of those things is our relationships. And I think before we even get to talk about that, I just want to sort of acknowledge the fact that everybody, certainly everyone on this call, but really everyone we know, essentially in the entire world today, is functioning at various levels, like we said, various levels of function or dysfunction. And that's just the way that it is for everyone. I think there is a certain comfort in knowing that we are all, some days are okay and some days might be great, and some people may have more good days than bad days or bad days than good days. But overall, we are all grappling with something that is just unknown, unforeseen, and that we find ourselves totally inadequately prepared for. That being the case, what ends up happening is that we all sort of came into this pandemic, this crisis, sort of with different tools, and also at different places in our lives, right? Some of us kicked off, some of the ones who have, some of the moms, let's say, who have kids in school, some of them may have started off with color-coded schedules and plans and extracurriculars and, added work to sort of, to really make sure that their child is getting all the enrichment that they want them to get. And some of us knew that it would be a good day if we kept everybody alive and fed, somewhat clean, and that was about it. So I think there are obviously various levels. And I think for many people, we also brought into this our regular lives. So anybody who I've spoken to who says, oh, I'm dealing with, X, Y, or Z, and in talking to them more, it turns out, right, they were already dealing with X, Y, or Z before. Then you throw a pandemic on top of that, and you're just looking at a lot of challenge to ourselves, to our families, to our communities. And I just want to acknowledge that for some people, staying sane on a daily basis, not sinking into a depression on a daily basis is really something to be proud of. That's an accomplishment. Getting very basic things done is an accomplishment. And by basic, I mean basic. I mean like making your bed in the morning, making sure you ate breakfast, you brushed your teeth. That's what to congratulate yourself for. And like we said, some of us were dealing with very complicated things before this happened. People were in mourning before this happened. People were dealing with sick relatives, people in their homes who need extra amounts of care, children or family members with special needs. There are couples struggling with infertility, couples struggling with issues with their children, all different kinds of challenges, and none of that went away when this started. And so just to sort of acknowledge that we are all, again, you take yourself with you wherever you go. And as we all moved into our homes very permanently, we took all of our stuff with us, and now we're just having to stare at it all day. And I think that it's just worth acknowledging that that's really where we find ourselves. So for those of you who feel like you are barely hanging on, hang in, because you have a lot of good company. You have a lot of highly functional people who are feeling just as incapable of functioning as you are. And that being said, I hope that there is just a sense of imachem anachnu b'tzara, right? We are all in this together. We are all struggling. We all see each other's pain. We feel for each other. And I'll mention this again later on, but most importantly, if you are in a place or a space where you feel that your daily functioning is like you are really just not, you're just not getting there on a daily basis, please reach out to someone for help. you have a lot of, hopefully you have a lot of people, even just if you look at the list of participants in our Shul family that you can reach out to. But as always, my husband is available, I am available. We have outstanding mental health professionals that we are connected to and other professionals. And nobody should be going through this without the proper support that they need. Okay, now I'm really ready to get started. So when Adina and I were talking about relationships, so I can't remember if it was her or me that said the idea of including the relationship we have with ourselves. And the truth is, that's actually most of what I want to talk about. We're going to talk about all relationships, but I think at the core of every relationship is the me part, the I part of every relationship. So I really do want to talk about that, but I was afraid if that's what we called the class, nobody would want to hear it. But now that I have you, I feel like I can sort of sneak it in there. So I heard recently from Dr. Untitled Chapter. She is the wife of Rabbi J.J. Schachter, who is one of my all-time favorite speakers. I hope we'll have the pleasure of having him come here soon when people can travel and he can be a scholar in residence and educate us. My husband and I both listen to his shiurim very, very often and turn to him for all sorts of advice. And his wife she's very much the Rebbitzin mentor. She's like the big mama of the Rebbitzins, having been a Rebbitzin herself for many decades. And she's also a very insightful, outstanding psychotherapist. And she shared with us recently that essentially, if you want to think about relationships, the way to do it is to think of them in concentric circles. So you all know what that is? I don't know. I haven't taken math in a while, but concentric circles, right? So like I drew one on my paper. I don't know if you could see. See my circles? Okay. So in the innermost circle is ourselves, right? Me. I wrote me in my innermost circle. In the circle right around that, the next concentric, the first really concentric circle is our immediate family. For those of us who are living with family members, it's the people that are in your house. For those of us who are not living with family members, it's the people that were living in our house, right? That we are the most connected to, whether it's our parents, if we're blessed to still have parents, or siblings, or children who may be grown and out of the house, very close friends, again, siblings, whoever it might be, that's that next circle. In the circle beyond that, generally, is that next tier of family. Maybe there you're looking at, aunts and uncles or cousins. For some of us, it might be, our close friends. And then beyond that, the next circle is our community. And probably the circle after that is just the universe. In a weird sort of way, I'm finding, even though I've been in my house essentially for 2 months, pretty much nonstop with the exceptional walk around the block, I think that you're not going to believe this, but a very big bug just landed on my computer. Okay, it's upside down. I hope it's going to stay that way. Little comic relief. Okay. So we were saying, so being stuck at home in a very weird way, even though I'm only seeing thankfully, the same people that I'm seeing every day. But in a weird way, I feel much more a citizen of the universe, I think, than I ever have. And I'm someone who tries to recycle and tries to think about the world and the globe and the environment. Not that I've been so good about that since this whole thing started, but I was very good about it before this craziness started. In some ways, I think we're all actually feeling more connected to the universe because we're all experiencing the same thing. Now, we're not experiencing it the same way. Obviously, me sitting in my home, thank God, with Wi-Fi and stocked pantry and fridge and freezer, I'm not experiencing it the same way as other people in other places. But we are all riding this, as I'm sure many of you have seen this meme, right? We're all riding through the same storm. We're just not all on the same boat. And so I think that even though normally I might be someone who thinks of myself as connected to the universe, now more than ever, we're really feeling like what I do makes a difference. What's happening in that place is connected to what's happening in my place because we're all facing the same essential invisible threat, this invisible enemy. And so what Dr. Schachter pointed out to us is that even though we all have these many, many circles, we also have this one, the person who lives in that innermost circle is us. That's it. And what she pointed out, and she illustrated it beautifully, and I hope I'll have a chance to just sort of explain it along the lines of what she did, is that in order for the other circles to function, the innermost circle has to be at some level of functioning. And what she basically said to us is, I want you to think of my face and hear my voice. Now, I wouldn't say that because I don't want any of you to think of my face or hear my voice, but I do like to think of Dr. Schachter, who said, when you're feeling like your battery is about to die, right? And I don't know how many of you like to live dangerously like me and let your phone get down to 2%, 1%, and then it dies and you think, okay, great, now I'll recharge it. I know some people, that makes my parents very anxious. My mother's probably laughing because if it gets in my parents' house, if the phone goes below 85%, you had better get it attached to the charger immediately. So some of us like to live dangerously, and we push ourselves and push ourselves and push ourselves the way some of us let our phone battery drain. And as Dr. Naomi Greenblatt says, whom we'll talk about a little bit later, the bottom line is, no matter where you are, if you end up, God forbid, in an emergency and you need to call 911, if your battery is dead on your phone, it still doesn't call 911, right? Like, we'd like to think they came up with a way that the phone will still call 911 even if the battery's dead. It's not true. So if we allow ourselves to get so depleted that we aren't functioning ourselves, then unfortunately, we're not going to be able to keep those circles around us going very well. And so she was begging us and encouraging us, and I'm going to do the same for everyone who's with us tonight, to say that the notion of self-care, of self-nurturing, taking care of oneself, is not a luxury. It's not a luxury. It's a necessity. And if it helps you to think of it as the only way that you can take care of those other circles, then think of it that way. We don't have to argue the point of why it's important to take care of yourself. We can certainly go to the Torah, ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, right? Love your neighbor as thyself. That, by definition, presupposes that you love yourself, right? Loving yourself means caring for yourself. So it doesn't really matter why we're doing it, if it's because we inherently understand the value of caring for ourselves, or because we're so scared that we're going to just completely, be depleted that we can't care for anybody else. At this point, it's okay if it's not for the best reasons. We just have to do what we need to do. And so she was really encouraging us to refuel and to care for ourselves. And I know for myself, if you were to ask me, like, was I good about self-care before this happened? So in my head, I associate self-care with like healthy practices, right? So let's see, did I exercise? No, I hadn't exercised in like 2.5 years, quite honestly. I don't think walking to TBDJ counts as exercise if you know where I live, like around the corner. So no, I haven't exercised. No, I don't get enough sleep. No, I haven't gotten a massage or a facial or any of those things. What was really helpful about Dr. Schachter, and then eventually I also was able to hear something from Dr. Naomi Greenblatt, which I'm going to share with you as well. Dr. Naomi Greenblatt, you may be familiar with. Her husband is Jason Greenblatt, so the two of them are like quite the dynamic duo. He was an appointee of President Trump's on the Middle East and on other things. And I really knew of her first, frankly. She is a brilliant psychiatrist. Her specialty is reproductive psychiatry. So her client base are essentially women who face significant mental health challenges, either as a result of pregnancy and postpartum, or women who dealt with other mental health challenges and are in the reproductive stages of their lives. And she's a psychiatrist, so she engages in many, many, many hours of therapy. Works very full time, and obviously prescribes medication when necessary. An insightful and really quite brilliant, down-to-earth woman. And when she discussed self-care with us, it all of a sudden sounded like something that I might be able to do. And I thought to myself, if it's something that I'm willing to do, and I'm only sharing with you the parts that I was willing to sort of take in. She said a lot more than this, but she mentioned a couple things that I thought, if I found it so useful, I'm hoping that it'll resonate with some of you as well. So the first thing she said is, when we realize that we need to recharge, so you feel like the battery's just about to die and you need help fast. So in an ideal world, your spouse or whoever the people that you're living with, or the person who says that they need your attention, who doesn't live in your home, another relative or a friend, will sort of anticipate and read your mind and know what you need. but chances are that won't happen. And trust me, if it didn't happen before this started, it is definitely not happening now. There are no mind readers living among us. So she really just highlighted the idea that as soon as we figure out what it is that we need to communicate it with the people that can help us access it. And whether that person lives with you or doesn't live with you, that don't stand on ceremony and wait for someone to figure it out. This I definitely know from experience, right? Don't they see that I'm about to lose it? Don't they understand that if they eat another meal, I'm actually just going to break down and have a complete and total fit? No, of course they don't realize. Otherwise, they wouldn't keep eating, right? Or leaving all their stuff all over the place, or not cleaning it, et cetera, et cetera. This is just not the time to wait for someone to become a mind reader. Won't happen anyway. So it's just going to lead to disappointment. And don't be shy. Communicate. The other thing she pointed out is, in order to be able to tell somebody else what we need to know what we need. So it's a really great, and as I'm talking and, you know, you're thinking or, you know, not thinking, but trying to figure out how this is relevant to you, think about the things that you know recharge your battery. Now, like if you open a textbook or you look up self-care online, so it's going to tell you, oh, you need this amount of exercise, you need to go outside, you need to drink a certain amount of water, you need to sleep a certain number of hours. All those things I'm sure are true. But if in the moment you know what you need is time away from every breathing human that lives in your house, well, then that's what you need to take. If it means you need to check in with a friend, then that's what you need. If you need to engage in your hobby, if you need to listen to calming music, if you need to listen to a class, or watch a video that makes you laugh or cry or feel more spiritual. So you need to have a list. It's probably really great if you have it written down somewhere, like on your phone, but at the very least, you just want to have those things in your head. So much of the time, you're going to have to make it happen. But every once in a while, you're going to get this gift of time where you could take care of yourself. And if you don't know what to do with it, you might waste it. So you really want to just know, what is it that really just makes me feel better? You know, I just like to take a hot shower, even if it's in the middle of the day. That just makes me feel good. Then that's the self-care that you need. And again, this idea of communicating. So as our needs are going to change, because today I really was fine to be around everybody, but I needed some outside time. So I went outside with other people and that was fine for me today. But yesterday I needed alone time. So just to keep realizing for ourselves what we need and then communicating it, right? Because if the last time we told everybody what we needed was alone time, so they're going to leave us alone, or not bother us when we lock all the doors in order for them to access us. But if that changes, then they're not going to know. So we just need to keep having that conversation. The other thing, the thing that I think the next two things really meant a lot to me when I heard them from Dr. Greenblatt. One of them really helped me understand that I do take better care of myself than I realized, but I just wasn't paying attention. And I think this is really helpful because for a lot of people who are juggling many different roles at once, like their chief chef and janitor and parent, teacher, and many other things, they don't realize maybe when they are actually doing something for themselves because it's so rushed and you're not paying attention. So what Dr. Greenblatt pointed out is having intentionality, or what we would maybe call kavana, right? Recognizing that what I'm doing right now for these 3 minutes, oh, actually I like this feels good. She gave an example, and this was the first example she gave where I thought, wow, I do that. Now I'm going to pay attention, which is, she said, drink your coffee or your cup of tea or whatever it is, your smoothie, your juice, whatever it might be, for 5 minutes, not walking around your house. Just sit. Before you before you get everybody on their Zooms, or before you start to check in on all of your relatives who aren't living with you and you want to make sure everyone's okay, just take those few minutes, hold your cup of coffee in your hand. If you're somebody who likes how that feels, you just like that feeling, but say to yourself, oh, I'm taking 5 minutes to myself. That there is something profound about having the intention that I'm caring for myself, right? And it doesn't require you to take on more things. Oh, now, the idea of self-care used to stress me out. What do you mean? Now I have to take a walk and you want me to sweat and exercise and then I got to change. And then that's like too many things. I can't handle that. But the idea of turning something that I'm doing anyway into an opportunity to sort of like intentionally take a few moments for myself and tell myself this is a way that I can recharge. So there's something really, I think, really powerful about that. And one of the and she gave this name, this like 5-minute activity, a name, which I think is brilliant. It just is something that it's been playing in my head since I heard this from her about a month ago. And that's the idea of microdosing. It doesn't have to be that I took a 2-hour nap. And it doesn't have to be that I took an 1.5-hour walk, right? Some days I do need that. But a lot of times it's really okay for me to just take the 5 minutes with my cup of coffee, a microdose. If we look to make a big amount of time, a big investment in nurturing, then maybe it's not going to happen. So take the 5 minutes if you have the 5 minutes or the 2 minutes, right? And be intentional about it in small doses. So for some of us, maybe it's 5 minutes of davening or 5 minutes of checking in on someone that we've been thinking about, but that just feels like, oh, hearing their voice really just, wow, I feel better now. So the idea of, again, microdosing, short, small increments that allow us to sort of to recharge a bit. I know some people are, and I'm actually friends with people like this, who wake up early before their children. This is not me, but I'm friends with these people anyway. They wake up early before their kids, and they exercise and they shower and they daven and they get dressed and they make breakfast, and then they're like Mary Poppins for their children, right? I love those people, but I'm not that person. So when I realized that I could first sit down and have my 5 minutes with my coffee at 9:45 after I've gotten everybody on their Zoom, and that was really a great, that was a great find for me. It's like, oh, okay, I can do that. I can manage 5 minutes with a cup of coffee. And then when it comes to the intentionality, I'll just mention, I find myself, and maybe other people in my house, we might not realize that we're relaxing, that we're chilling, that we're downloading, that we're just putting our feet up. Maybe we're scrolling through social media, or looking at our emails, or looking at pictures. So if that activity for 5 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour, whatever it is, if that actually relaxes us and recharges us, it doesn't for everybody. But if it does, tell yourself, now I'm gonna take half an hour and check what's going on Facebook. And you're gonna feel like you took care of yourself and all you did was do something that you normally do. But it's just an opportunity to train yourself that taking care of yourself is important. Recharging your battery is important. The next thing I want to mention from Dr. Greenblatt, which this one also, she mentions quite a few things, but this is the one other one that I want to mention that really spoke to me. So she gave it a fancy term. I'm going to give it the less fancy term, but I'll share with you what she said. She said that if any of us have ever been fortunate enough to be in a position, whether in a job or in a school environment as a student, where we had a supervisor or a boss who was evaluating us and our performance, then if they did a good job and they would call us in for a meeting and talk to us about how we've been doing lately, how they noticed progress that we've made, how we pulled off a project, very successfully, and they point out in detail all the things that we did in order to be able to accomplish that project, well, then we were very fortunate, right? To be in an environment like that, where you are given that kind of feedback and that kind of validation and appreciation. So that's really a gift. That kind of job is really a gift. The one place, so if you have that, hold on to it. But the one place where most people never have that is in their house or in their personal life. There's no supervisor, right? Again, if you're blessed and you have parents in your life who check in on you and tell you that they're proud of you, then that is really a tremendous bracha. They're not always so objective, but maybe they are, I don't know. But what's really lacking for most of us is that in our daily lives, as we are doing stuff, we're like getting things done, sometimes a lot, sometimes very little, but as we accomplish each thing, we're doing a lot. It requires a lot of executive functioning, right? I mean, I know this sounds silly, but normally making dinner, okay, so I never found making dinner so simple. But for those people who did, now it's not simple because I don't even know what's in my freezer, right? Because someone else is doing my grocery shopping, or I'm ordering online, or I don't know when the next ingredient, oh, I thought I was going to make this for dinner, but it turns out they were out of that at the 9 grocery stores that I placed orders in. So, right. Or like me, the delivery came and I was trying not to touch it yet. So I left the stuff in the box, but then I forgot that half that box was perishable stuff. So there you go. Can't eat any of those things now for dinner. So when we actually make dinner and it gets on the table, or we make ourselves like a really good cup of coffee, and that means we like went through all the steps so that we really enjoy it, when we accomplish something, and it doesn't have to be major. In my house tonight, I was really congratulating myself that I changed the sheets on a few of the beds. I mean, like that felt like a big accomplishment. That might not be a big accomplishment for some of you, but for me, that was a big accomplishment. And what Dr. Greenblatt said is that if we wait, just like if we wait for our family members to read our minds so that they know that we need a break, and then they tell us how to take that break and take care of ourselves, it's never going to happen. So the same thing goes for acknowledging our accomplishments, be they little or be they large, that we have to pat ourselves on the back. She said, actually it was so cute. She said, this muscle should be the strongest muscle in your arm because you should be doing this all the time. What she calls it is self-supervisory comments. I just love that. Self-supervisory comments, which is essentially patting yourself on the back, but like articulating it, saying it. Now I find it has more power when I say it to somebody else, and I'm not embarrassed to say in front of my children or my husband, you know, that was really awesome that I pulled that off. Like, I'm really proud of myself. And we shouldn't be ashamed of saying that. For some of us, it's good enough to say it to ourselves. And that's really, it's an important thing to do. I did that. I can give you literally the day after I heard this. I don't know, I was organizing one meal or another, who knows? I don't know. We're eating all day, but one meal. And I thought I had everything all set for everybody, but some of you may know I have one exceptionally picky eater. And there are not so many things that he eats. And I had made a few things that I figured I had, had enough food for everyone. And then I remembered that this boy wasn't gonna have anything to eat, but I remembered like a whole hour before we were getting ready to eat. That never happens. I always forget until I'm putting dinner on the table and then realize I don't have any food for him. So I was so amazed with myself that I remembered a whole hour before and I was able to give him food. Now, I don't know, that probably wasn't a big deal, but he doesn't usually know because I don't tell him that I had to scramble at the last minute. But for myself, I know this sounds ridiculous because it's like I forgot about one of my kids and what he needs to eat. But it was such an accomplishment. And I had just heard this from Dr. Greenblatt, and I thought, this is exactly what she's talking about. I am proud of myself that I remembered to get schnitzel. Like, it sounds stupid, but it was really a big deal. It was an accomplishment. And so the idea that we can't wait for other people to congratulate us on getting stuff done, we got to feel good about it ourselves. And we have to tell ourselves, that was pretty good. We have to tell ourselves that. Dr. Greenblatt, like I mentioned before, she primarily sees women. She really sees only women, but sometimes also their husbands, and she's a reproductive psychiatrist. So she actually said that she is shocked to see how well her clients are doing. And she's had some clients who've dealt with some very devastating losses and some who have really faced higher levels of anxiety than they ever knew they were capable of facing given the situation. Especially there was a time frame in New York where, as I believe there was here also, where if a woman went to have a baby, she had to go by herself. And then she was kicked out of the hospital like 12 or 18 hours later. But that is very daunting for somebody with significant mental health challenges to go and have a baby in a hospital where they're treating COVID-19 patients. That was just a tremendous amount of anxiety. And she said, client after client, she was literally in a state of amazement and awe at how well they were doing. And some of them, she said, were able to articulate to her that they felt like they had been training for this their whole lives. She said, it's like the first time she feels like people who have been dealing with mental health challenges in the realm of anxiety, maybe depression, that the therapy that they've been in for the years leading up to this gave them a lot of the skills and the tools that they needed to sort of face this. And so I just thought that was an amazing insight that she had. And what she told us is that in the context of relationships, and again, we're still talking about the relationship with ourselves, but is one very important calculation. So we talked about a couple of tips and things that we can do. And I just want to get to the emotional piece for a minute. Again, I'm hardly an expert, but I'm sharing things that I heard from very smart people. So she pointed out, and we all know this, so I'm not telling you something you don't know, but it just was very powerful to hear her say it, that in general, if our expectations are here and reality is here, so normally we would say, okay, well, I can adjust the reality to try to meet my expectations. Well, as we all know, there's essentially nothing most of us can do to adjust our reality today. I mean, the secret is that we usually can't, but we think we can. We're under the illusion that we can adjust things, that we have control. This whole thing has shown us that we essentially have no control, which is, maybe we'll have a minute to talk about that later. But if our expectations are here and reality is here, all this space in between is a breeding ground for anxiety, fear, panic, frustration, depression, feeling overwhelmed, feeling isolated, right? Because there's all this space where what I want to happen and what is actually happening, there's so much space in between, and there's nothing that I can do to adjust it. So obviously the key is to adjust expectations. And I think Dr. Viktor Frankl, whom I hope you've all heard of, and I hope you've read at least one of his works, Man's Search for Meaning, I think is probably the most famous one. Really, it will change your life. I don't say that about most books. That book will change your life. He was a Holocaust survivor, became a psychiatrist. He was a psychiatrist, continued in his practice of psychiatry. Someone I think our world was blessed to have him and to have his writings, that we still have them with us. And he has said so many brilliant things, but the one that I'll share tonight that you may have realized on your own, but it's always good to hear it from brilliant people, is that an abnormal reaction to an abnormal situation is perfectly normal. So again, an abnormal reaction to an abnormal situation is perfectly normal. So when we talk about the realm of emotions in dealing with what we're dealing with, there is no such thing as a wrong, inappropriate, unwelcome reaction. We actually need to feel the entire rainbow, the entire spectrum of emotions. And if that's what we're feeling, then that's what we're feeling. And that's perfectly normal. We're going to see, this is true, obviously, in everyone around us, but we first have to be okay with it within ourselves. So I think I actually read this from Dr. Tal Ben-Shahar, who is the very famous Israeli psychologist, who's like the champion of positive psychology. He's done a ton of work on anxiety. I think he's at Harvard and also in Israel somewhere, maybe IGC, I'm not sure. Also brilliant. I mean, his stuff to read is just fantastic. So Dr. Ben-Shahar says that there's one very important reason why you need to be okay with every emotion you have. And that includes not pushing away your fear, not pushing away your anxiety, your panic, your depression, your feeling of isolation. Because what happens is that, according to this theory, is that all emotions flow through one channel. There's one channel, and through that channel flows all of your emotions. So if you decide, oh, that feeling of panic, nah, I can't handle that. Oh, I'm afraid, no, I don't want any of that. If we block the channel from which our negative emotions flow, or what we consider to be negative emotions, we're also blocking the same channel for all positive emotions. So that if I don't allow myself to feel pain, fear, anxiety, loneliness, helplessness, all of the things that we're all experiencing at various rates on different days at different times, if we don't allow ourselves to feel that, we are also, by definition, limiting our ability to feel love, to feel joy, to feel gratitude, to feel connected, because it all flows through the same point. And so what Dr. Ben-Shahar and essentially every psychologist whose works I've been reading over the last number of weeks and months, probably years, what they all say is that the trend is to embrace our emotions, right? Is not to say, oh, I'm not allowed to feel that. That's not okay. You're not allowed to feel that. No. Instead, it's to like open the door, invite in the panic, invite in the anxiety, shake its hands. Well, I mean, not a person, so that's okay now. Invite it into your house, tell them how you're feeling, name, as Dr. Palkovitz always says, name the monster. If you can label it and you can name it, you can live with it. So that yucky feeling, figure out what it is. Don't just, I feel blah. Figure out what it is that's causing it, give it a name, and then be good with it, welcome it, accept it. It doesn't feel great. I mean, I think we all know that, right? But recognize that that's what it is, and then realize that there's a reason why you're experiencing it, right? You're living in a crazy time. There are crazy things going on. It is perfectly normal to have any of those emotions, to have any of those reactions, and how vital it is for our own sanity to validate our own feelings. And again, if we have a prayer of validating any of our loved ones' emotions, we have to learn how to validate our own. So according to Dr. Ben Shachar, welcome in your emotions. Don't push them out, because you don't want to block your capacity to experience all the good stuff, right? I was thinking in my head, it's like if you block the yuck, then you also block the yay. And you want to have the yay. You want to have the good stuff. You want to experience the warmth and the connection, even if it's via a Zoom, right? But if you're blocking yourself from connection to all types of emotion, then you won't be able to experience the good stuff. So we need to be compassionate with ourselves. We need to cut ourselves a break and acknowledge our feelings, welcome them, label them. This is incidentally, as I'm sure you all know better than me, this is exceptionally helpful for children, right? To help them come up, like, really, your stomach's hurting? Oh gosh, again? Like, we've been having a stomachache a lot. Okay, and you're not sick. Okay, let's talk about that, right? And to help a child name the emotion that they're feeling, oh my gosh, it just feels so much better. And now I can deal with it, because if it has a name, I can talk about it. And if I can talk about it, I can live with it. I don't remember who said this recently, but I heard somebody say, right, if I can label it, I can live with it. And if I can laugh at it, I can really live with it, right? It's okay to laugh at ourselves. It's okay, right? Anxiety is real and it's serious. Panic, all of these things are real and they are serious. But if you're in a place where you can laugh about it, you know you're really going to be okay. And how important that is. So all feelings are good. All feelings are vital. I think a side note, and that I mentioned before, and again, Dr. Blumenthal, I think, is addressing this at some point over the weekend. Normal levels of anxiety in the North American population is about 18% of people experience some kind of anxiety. The guess is now from the psychological community is between 50 and 60%. That's really significant. Dr. Greenblatt phrased it this way. She said, if normal levels of anxiety for people are between, let's say, a 1 and 2, so now it's between like a 4 and 5 out of 10. So if normal is 1 and 2, but now the new normal, so to speak, like the new reality, instead of being 1 or 2 out of 10 is 4 or 5 out of 10. And she was really advocating for people. And as Rebbitzin, she was encouraging us to share with our congregation. So I'm sharing with you that as soon as you feel that your anxiety or any other difficulty that you're experiencing is impairing your daily functioning, right? And I don't like, for one day, okay, so you needed to sleep a little bit more, okay. But if you start to notice that your functioning is impaired, so she was really encouraging, okay, again, she's a psychiatrist, so she likes medication, but she also does therapy, and she was really encouraging people that this is a very appropriate time to reach out to your regular doctor. I know in the States, it's called a family doctor. That's what it's called here. So a general practitioner. You don't need to seek out a mental health expert at this point. Everyone is acknowledging that this is a time that people might need a little bit of help to get back to their baseline of functioning, and that this is something to take advantage of at this time. Again, Dr. Pelkovitz and many other psychologists have incredible tips on dealing with anxiety. I'm not going to go there, but if you're looking for stuff, I'm happy to share with you some of the notes and some of the links that they shared with us. One more point on emotions before we move on, and that is Dr. Pelkovitz said that there's this amazing paradox, and I can't believe how true this is. I never thought of it this way, that there's this amazing paradox when we learn to accept the fact that we don't have control of what's going on in the world, and we don't have control over our lives, that as soon as we actually are okay with that, that's actually when we can do something about it. And if you think about it, it doesn't make a lot of sense. But Dr. Pelkovitz quoted Dr. David Rosmarin, who is a psychologist also, I think, at Harvard, who has done a tremendous amount of research on this. He's a very well-respected therapist. He's an Orthodox Jew. And I think if he hadn't been in practice for so many years, people would think he's crazy, because much of his research in the more recent years has been on how studying different Jewish works of bitachon and emunah, of faith and belief, and different works of musar, of like improvement of character, improvement of self, is a very valid treatment for different mental health challenges that people have, in particular anxiety. Fascinating. But it's as scientific-based research as you can get, and he's using Sfarim in his research, like the Shara Emunah by Rabbeinu Bachya. I mean, it's really fascinating. But what he basically is saying is this, that if a person recognizes that, as we say in the song that some of us are used to singing in Shalosh Shodes, or other times maybe in camp, Kol ha'olam kulo gesher tsar ma'od, right? The whole world is really a very narrow bridge. That essentially in life, we are living on a very narrow bridge. Now, we don't like to think of life that way, right? We like to think that we're invulnerable. We like to think that things are going to go a certain way, and we know what's going to happen because we've been around for a while, so we know stuff. But the truth is that that's completely baseless. Unfortunately, some of us know this in different ways than others. But the bottom line is that there is a lot in this world that is out of our control, that life really is a very narrow bridge. It's a tsar ma'od, a gesher tsar ma'od. But that somehow there's this power in us acknowledging that life is a narrow bridge. And when I accept that fact, which I think we're actually doing a better job now of doing so, at least as a community, as a world, than in any recent time that I can think of, that is actually very empowering. The knowledge that things are precarious and life is so precious and we don't really know what to expect, that when we really are able to sort of absorb that lesson, it gives us some sense of control and some sense of power, even in the recognition that we don't have control or power. Okay, I'll leave that as it may be. So there's a lot more to say about the self. I just want to throw one more thing in before we move on to other relationships. And that is when you draw your circle, and it's a great activity. I'm not a big activity doer, but this one I managed to do. When you draw your concentric circles and you put yourself in that middle circle, so there's maybe one other thing that you want to put in that circle with you, and that's God, right? That's your creator. When we put ourselves in that circle by ourselves, so I know to me, it seems very overwhelming. When I looked at my page after I drew my circles, and I had, drawn out the different members of my family and all of the different circles, and I looked at myself in that middle circle, like that inner circle, and it's all on me to keep all this going. No, that's never going to work. Like, that's way too overwhelming. But when I realized, again, from listening to so many of these wonderful, insightful people, that that's actually not what this is, right? I need to take care of myself first, but I'm not actually in this circle by myself. And I think for many people, this entire experience has either made us, much like every other tragedy and trauma that any of us have experienced, you either turn towards God or you can't deal with him right now, so you're looking away. But I think so long as there's been a response that includes God, even if it's turning away from him, but you know that he's there somewhere. So that's very much part of this process of caring for ourselves. I heard a beautiful idea. I think I will never say these words in the same way. A beautiful idea from Rebbitzin Abby Lerner, who is the Rebbitzin in Great Neck for like 40 something years. She and her husband they just retired, and they are planning to make Aliyah this summer after 40 something years in the rabbinate. And they also recently recovered from coronavirus. That they both got at the shul's dinner honoring her husband for his 40 years of service. They were quite sick, and thank God they both recovered. Thank God. She shared something about her insights to her davening since her recovery, and this blew me away. She said, most of us, I know for myself, this is not something I say every day. I should, but I don't. But since my little ones are home and I'm hearing them daven, this is something they say. So now I started saying it again because I'm hearing it in my house. The tefillah of Matovu Ohalecha Yaakov Mishkenotecha Yisrael. So later on we say Va'ani berov chastecha avo vetecha. Right? So normally it's actually a quote from Tehillim, that pasuk, Va'ani berov chastecha avo vetecha. And I, with your abundant kindness, avo vetecha, I will come to your house. So if you read it in Tehillim, it's King David talking. So we know what he's saying. David HaMelech, King David, was obsessed with building the temple. All he wanted was to build a home for God and to hang out with him there. So when you read the words, you think of David HaMelech. But Rebbitzin Lerner said it so differently, and I really like it. Like I said, it took my breath away. She said, pretend for a moment that David HaMelech is not talking. Pretend for a moment that you're taking the pasuk out of context and you're reading it as God is talking, right? Not me, not David HaMelech, God himself is talking. And what is he saying? Va'ani, I, God, berov chastecha, because of your tremendous chesed, because of all the kindness you have been doing, avo beitecha, I want to come to your house. I think I can't be alone in this, that I'm looking around, not just at our community, but the world over, but maybe especially in our community. And I have been completely and totally blown away by the amount of kindness, of selflessness, by the self-sacrifice that people have made for others. It is nothing short of incredible. I mean, people who shouldn't have any time on their hands, and people who do have time on their hands but are juggling other things, other challenges, and they are finding time and space to make room for other people and to be concerned about other people and to help other people. I think for those of us who connect to God through Torah study or through tefillah or through Tehillim, which is, I think I've said publicly a number of times, never been one of my, that one's hard for me, but I think I've never said more Tehillim in my life than I have in the last 8 weeks. So for those of us who have those avenues of access to Hashem, it's amazing. It's great, right? It's I don't want to say easy, but it's relatively easy, right? We're home now. For many people, their prayer has taken on a whole new level of meaning now that they're home. It's maybe better than it was in shul. I won't tell anyone if it's true. It's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. But for some of us, that's not doing it. Like, we need to do things. And here, I think when we read this phrase, the idea that Hashem wants to connect with us when we're taking care of each other. Va'ani berov chastecha avo veitecha, right? I'm coming to your house because your house is full of chesed. Your house is full of kindness. And I think this is not an accident that God says he wants to hang out in our homes, because the research in psychology really proves that that this is true, that this is the case, that when people give to others, that it actually boosts their immune system, it enhances their longevity, it gives them better coping skills, mechanisms in order to deal with challenges like depression and anxiety. So much so that Dr. Palkovitz, who is like my guru for all things, so Dr. Palkovitz really says, during these times, I mean, it's beautiful if you can bake cookies for the Federation, like it's amazing. And if you can help people outside your home, that's fantastic. And sometimes that's easier. Sometimes it's easier to get our kids and ourselves even on board to help people outside. The real challenge is often inside our homes, right? The kindness that might be available to us to do inside our homes. And he actually said, even if your kids start screaming and yelling and they tell you that they hate you, demand that they be helpful at home. That it is so important for children to have jobs at home, chores. And if it's not something that we were on top of, I know we're blessed to normally have some cleaning help in the house. So there are a lot of things my kids get away with that I wish they would do, but they don't, because they know someone's coming and they're going to do it. Well, she hasn't been here in 8.5 weeks. So if it's going to happen, I'm going to need some help to make it happen. And as much as the kids resent it and they complain, I don't want you to think like everybody's like, oh, mommy, can I help? Can I help? I don't know. I don't think that's real life. Maybe some of the kids, some of the time. But Dr. Palkovitz literally said, in the same way that you would demand that your child get an immunization or a booster, that's what you're doing when you force your child to be helpful. Forced helpfulness, he called it. You are doing your children a favor. You're doing everyone in your house a favor when you make sure that people are being helpful. And again, if it's easier to get it done outside your house, fine. But I think these days, with most of us not going anywhere, the forced helpfulness is maybe best served in our own homes. So now that we understand that we need to take care of ourselves And part of taking care of ourselves is connecting to God, and whether that's through prayer or Torah study, or through doing chesed, because God likes that as well. That's a way to connect to him. Then we move on to the next circle. The truth is that everything that we practice on ourselves is really a skill and a tool that we should be using in our other relationships as well. Right? And this is true in a marriage. It's true with siblings. It's true with our parents, with our children, with our friends, with anyone that we have a relationship with. Those exact same tools that we mentioned before about adjusting expectation and to meet reality. Right? Dr. Greenblatt actually gave an amazing example that I also will never forget because it's just so jarring. She's their first child, I should say, her first pregnancy, she had triplets. And triplets like 21 years ago, I mean, it's not common now, right? But we have a little bit better care. So 21 years ago, she gave birth to triplets. And one of the things she thankfully knew in advance about her husband was that he was never going to change a diaper. She had triplets. And he wasn't going to change a diaper. And she says, we had 3 more children. So clearly we figured it out. She said, had she gone into that pregnancy or that delivery room or brought those 3 babies home, who thank God are all healthy and wonderful young people, if she had gone in expecting him to change and realize that she needed his help and he was going to change diapers, they would have had a disaster on their hands. But instead, she focused on all the things that he was good at. Right? Okay, so she knows he's not doing diaper duty, but oh my gosh, was he amazing at bathing and giving bottles and waking up in the middle of the night? Okay, so he also had to wake her if they needed to be changed. It's like a small problem. But the fact that she was able to adjust her expectation, really all of the great therapists and all of the great relationship experts talk about this, about managing your expectation. Don't expect the person to change, right? Manage the reality. Since you can't manage the reality, manage the expectation. The same idea about accepting our emotions, right? To welcome our own emotions is we have to welcome everybody else's emotions and their behaviors and their meltdowns. You have to expect them, right? It's going to happen. It's going to happen. When we expect that the Wi-Fi is going to crash, or when we expect that someone's going to have a meltdown because they find out we're having chicken for dinner, it's just not as bad when it happens, because I knew it was coming. I thought it might have happened tomorrow, but it turns out it happened today, right? I thought it was going to be this kid that freaked out, but it turned out it was that kid. Oh, that's so nice. You wanted to make me eggs, but you just dropped all 6 eggs on the floor. Okay, right? We need to figure out how we're going to manage the expectations, since the reality is kind of hard to address. Okay, and then as well, accepting our own emotions. I just want to mention quickly before I just get into the last little bit, before we wrap up, the Gottman Institute. So if you haven't heard of it, check it out. John Gottman and his wife, whose first name I can't remember for some reason, Julie, I think, John and Julie Gottman, they're both psychologists. Everything they've written is worth reading like 5 times. Their books are brilliant. They are the first, I guess, psychologists whose works that I read that I was so taken in by, because everything they write is scientific. It's not fluffy. It's real insight into relationships. And essentially, I think everything I've ever read from them that works, a lot of their work was done on marriage, but it all applies to every other relationship. You can follow them on Facebook, the Gottman Institute. There are Gottman trained therapists. My husband's trained in one of their theories, but they are, PhDs who are trained in their different approaches and their different tools, interventions, etc. The stuff is brilliant. And that's just something I need to point out. If we're going to talk about relationships and people going into the second circle, once we've moved out of our circle that we share with Hashem, and move into that next circle, is that the Gottman Institute is the best. That being said, here are a couple of things that the Gottman Institute says. I'm going to try to make it quick because I see the hour is getting late, but these are just so good. I have to share them with you. Okay. So the first one, and maybe the most important, is, and we're all like a little bit Zoom. I'm sure some of you saw that, the meme about the new Yiddish word, right? The ausgesumt, right? You've seen that, okay? So we are all ausgesumt. Like, you don't even want to hear the word Zoom. But actually what's happening is, with all the Zooming that our children might be doing or we're doing in order to stay in touch with family and friends and stay connected to the shul, is that we're getting used to Zooming And in a lot of ways in our relationships, it's a bad idea to zoom in. And what I mean by that is when we start to notice everything, and it's oh so very easy to notice things when you're living with people all the time, very hard to look away. I was listening to a class somebody gave, and they were saying, you know, that billboard you see all the time in New York City, if you see something, say something. That is 1000% the wrong approach to take in your house. Don't see it and don't say it. Most of the things, unfortunately, that we're going to notice, because we're trained, unfortunately, to zoom in on the negative, is not, we shouldn't see it and we shouldn't say it. If we can train ourselves to zoom in and notice the positive, well, then that is something that we should be doing. John Gottman always talks about making deposits into our emotional relationship bank accounts, how noticing the good in each other and expressing it is a way to sort of to get to this place where eventually you're in positive sentiment override, right? As opposed to being an overdraft, you're in override. So that if you're constantly training yourself to notice the good stuff, right? Or maybe you're not noticing it. Maybe you have to remind yourself of how good it was before, depending on your situation. But the more you think about that, the more conscious you are of it, the more you remind yourself of why you chose this person or why you love this person. That's going to give you this override when some of that less than glamorous stuff pops up, right? The things that you'd maybe rather not notice, but you can't help but notice. So in general, the idea is to try, like I said, to zoom out, to look at big picture and not small picture. And of course, that's very challenging because like we're seeing each other's stuff in ways, everything is being amplified, right? Like Dr. Pelkovitz saying, if all of you Rebbitzins haven't had a moment where you want to kill your husbands, call me, there's something wrong with you. None of you are used to seeing your husbands this much. I mean, many people have people in their lives whose professions pull them out of the house, and all of a sudden, everybody's around. Not everybody, that's not true. Many of our loved ones are out either working in their usual positions because they're necessary people who have essential positions in the medical world and elsewhere. And of course, we know that we are all thinking of them, praying for their continued good health and strength and for that of their families. But there is more together time than there used to be. And that can be a blessing, and that can also be very complicated. So I'm sure some of you have seen the meme that says, my wife and I are playing this really fun game during quarantine. It's called, Why Do You Do That Like That? And there are no winners. Right? When you notice the way that the person chews their food, like you never eat lunch with them, you have no idea what it's like. You don't even eat breakfast together. And now all of a sudden, oh gosh, that's how you make your cereal? That's so weird, right? Or why do you do that way? That's not going to get you anywhere. And in general, we're better off not saying something. If we need to say something, you want to choose your battles, right? Like only say the things that really, really, really need to be said. And when we do, as Dr. Pelkovitz says, you want to strike when the iron is cold. You never, ever, ever want to open your mouth when you are in a state of anger, tired, hungry. I saw a really cute acronym actually, HALT, halt, right? If you feel you're about to say something, halt. If you're feeling H, hungry, A, angry, L, lonely, or T, tired, don't say it. Just stuff it back in and wait until you've dealt with your own stuff, right? You got to deal with your very basic, Maslow's levels of physiological needs before you can start dealing with whatever challenges you have with the people in your home. Okay, so that's that. I want to just mention the idea of microdosing that we mentioned already as far as self-care, small things, little things, and how valuable that can be in our relationships, whether it's with people who we live with or people that we don't live with that we really want to connect with, but we're just finding it hard because, you're kind of running out of things to talk about. Like, I don't know, nothing's happened here. Anything happened there? Nope. Okay. Have a good day. Glad you guys are doing okay. But what can we do is, if I love you already doesn't mean so much, unfortunately, because maybe we say it so often. So what are other ways that we can express connection and look to sort of solidify our bonds with each other, again, with people in our homes and outside of our homes? So I find the idea of doing something quick and easy, this microdosing, is really a fabulous idea. And in order, I think, to get the most bang for your buck, again, the microdosing is just like I would sit with my cup of coffee for 3 minutes by myself And if someone wants to interrupt me, I just say, can this wait for a few minutes? Because I just want to finish my coffee, right? Just to intentionally give ourselves a few minutes. So in the same way, we can microdose in our relationships, something small, something quick, you know, to send a voice note to somebody instead of just a text, right? Something like a little bit more meaningful. I think the Chapman's 5 love languages here are invaluable. If you don't know what those are, Google them, look it up. It's really easy. It's like, I don't know, it's not even psychology 101. It's whatever comes before 101. Just really, really basic idea that we all have ways that we like to be loved, and then we tend to express love for other people based on what we like, totally forgetting that the person we are expressing love to might enjoy feeling loved in other ways. We just don't even think about it. We just love them the way we like to be loved. So there are 5 love languages. Most of us have a little bit of each. Some of us have a little more, but most of us have one main one or 2 maybe. And that it's ideal if we can figure out what ours are so that we can then communicate it to the people around us. Oh, it's really nice when you buy me presents, but the truth is, I just need you to tell me that you think I did a great job. I just need you to tell me that I really, you know, I pulled this off well, and like, you can't believe, you know, what a good job I'm doing, right? I need words of affirmation. I don't need you to buy me presents. I don't even like what you buy me. Stop buying presents. I don't have this problem. I'm just using it as an example. So it's important to know what, you know, what mine is and what the people around me, what their love languages are. And then my microdosing, I get the most bang for my buck, right? Because that 2-minute check-in, I'm going to try to use the one that's most fitting for that person. So again, Chapman wrote it with husbands and wives in mind, but it works in every relationship, and it is so powerful. I have to say, when you figure out what your kids' love languages are, and most of them have different ones, it's incredible. Like, you can see it in their face when they have heard you or seen you or felt you do the thing that they needed the most for them. It's really powerful. So I would mention that as far as that next circle. And finally, you can't talk about Gottman without talking about bids. Bidding is the word that the Gottmans use for when we reach out for attention. Again, their work was within marriage, but it works really in every relationship. That when very often you'll have people and they will be in a room together. I always picture, I don't know why, but I picture Rifki, Ricardo, and Lucy. I don't know if any of you are I Love Lucy fans, but we used to watch a lot of it in my house. My kids got very into it. I know it sounds weird because, like, who would expect teenagers to think I Love Lucy, but you could hear them cackling like all over the house. They love it. So I always picture Rifki Ricardo sitting at the kitchen table. And okay, today the version is the husband is sitting at the table on his phone or his iPad or whatever. But this is not a new problem, right? Rifki Ricardo was reading the newspaper, and Lucy could not get his attention for anything. She would make him these gourmet breakfasts, which she usually burns, whatever. But it didn't matter. She could not get his attention. She could be dancing, singing, nothing. And he would, like, maybe, you know, lower the paper for a second to look at her. She was making bids for his attention, and he wasn't turning towards her. When we make bids for each other's attention, and this is, again, it's true in every relationship, for those of us who are blessed to be in homes with a lot of people right now, the bids are kind of like we're being bombarded by bids for attention. I don't know if any of you saw the video that people recently were sharing, this Israeli woman, about the different kinds of ima. I mean, I actually couldn't catch my breath. I was laughing so hard. If you haven't seen it, make sure you see it. And if you're Hebrew, you don't even really need to understand every word she says. It's all the different ways that one word, ima, can mean 1,000 different things. It just depends on the intonation. It was really hysterical. So we are getting so many bids for our attention if we're blessed, right? If we're fortunate to be in a house filled with people. And honestly, if we're not in a house filled with people, there are a lot of people out there who want to hear from us and who want our attention, but maybe they're not being so forward about it, right? They're sending a text that says hi, right? Or they're waving to you across the street as you're walking, but nobody's really talking so much outside. So they're waving to you, but really they want you to respond to them. They're waiting for you. They're waiting to hear from you. And Gottman's research shows that couples who were successful, who ended up living, happily ever after, with a lot of work, because living happily ever after isn't really it's not a Disney movie, that their percentage of response to each other's bids was 86%. Sounds really high. But the good news is if you're living through a pandemic, then you got a lot of, you could miss a bunch because there are now so many more than usual since we're seeing each other so much more. And their research shows that the couples who did not make it, they turn towards each other only 33% of the time. Now there's a lot in between 33 and 86. So we don't, everybody needs to try to just aim to be a bit better than they've been. But it's true when it comes to spouses, it's true when it comes to children and siblings and parents and every relationship that we have, that when somebody makes a bid for our attention, that even if we can't give them everything that they want, at the end of the day, what they really want is just us to acknowledge that they're there. Lucy just wanted Ricky to smile at her and tell her she looked great, right? That's all she really wanted from him. She didn't need like a 2-hour conversation. She wanted 10 seconds of his time, of his attention. And so it doesn't have to be that when someone's calling us 10 different times during the day, that each time we turn towards them and do exactly what they want at that moment, right? We're allowed to say, sweetheart, I'm in the middle of something, or I'd like to get to that, but I just need a few more minutes, or can you come back in 10 minutes because I'm, in the middle of something? That's also fine. But we don't even realize how often we just don't even look up. I mean, I noticed it. I thought it was just a phone problem, but it turns out I ignore people on Shabbos also, even when I'm not on my phone, right? If I'm really into a book that I'm reading and I just need to finish the page or whatever, it doesn't matter if they're calling my name, I don't answer, right? That's not great. It's okay for me to say, I just have 2 more pages, let me just finish this chapter, but to try to look up from the book, not to be Ricky, not to throw Ricky under the bus, but I don't want to be Ricky Ricardo. We want to use these opportunities for connection. So just to sum up, let's just, obviously beyond that circle, there are many other circles of community. And as we talked about, the universe at large, we're citizens of the world. Certainly we all, I think, are feeling that. But just to sort of review, I think I said probably too much, but hopefully at least something that I said maybe resonated with you in some way. So let's just do a little review. Number one, this is all very hard. And many of us are not okay. And it's okay not to be okay, because that's what we're living through, right? And that's just fine. I'm reminded of the beautiful midrash that I'm sure you're all familiar with, that when the Jewish people went through the Yam Suf, that the midrash says, and again, take it literally or not literally, but the sages were trying to tell us something when they said that the sea didn't split into just dry land. It split into 12 lanes, essentially 12 lanes for traffic, or 12 swimming lanes, I guess. And that each tribe went through on their own, and they all arrived on the same place on the other side. I heard this from Dr. Zahava Farbman, and she mentioned it in a way, of course I know that midrash, I've heard it 100 times, but what I never thought of is that every person, every tribe, every shevet, as they were crossing, had a completely different experience. There were 12 different experiences as they were going through their storm, so to speak. Now, they all came out of it on the other side, and God willing, we're all going to come out of this on the other side, but how we got through it is going to be very different, right? And that's, God willing, that will be something, that will be our challenge for when this is over, is that just because we came out of it with this experience is certainly not going to be reflective of other people's. The other thing the Midrash points out is that you could see from your lane into other people's lanes, so that it was water, right? So you could see through it essentially. And that the fact that we could see into each other's lanes wasn't in order so we could compare, well, how are they doing? Because, oh my gosh, there is so much of that now, right? This family is managing, they're doing this and they're doing that and they're doing this and they're doing that. And wow, that's amazing. And she's going to all these classes. She's constantly on Zoom, and right? This is 1000% not the time to compare ourselves to anybody. But what we can do, why is it that the different shvatim, the different tribes could see each other so they could check in on each other, right? So just because somebody looks like they have it together, I think we now know, Mental Health Awareness Month aside, we all know that just because somebody looks like they've got it together does not mean that they do. I am amazed every time I make the effort, and I would like to keep, to do it more often, but that when you check on someone that you're sure doesn't need to be checked on, but maybe you just check on them because, it's something to ask them or something to talk to them, how meaningful it is to people, how it really, everybody, we all need each other, right? There is nobody who is in a place that isn't in some kind of need. And that was true before this happened. So it is way more true now than ever before. And we spoke about circles, with ourselves being in the center, and that if we don't care for ourselves and our battery dies, then we can't call 911. excuse me, we talked about the way that that we can try to do that is accepting and welcoming all emotions, positive and negative, because if we want to feel the good, we also have to feel the yuck, and we'll block our ability to feel completely. That we have to know what helps us recharge. We have to communicate what our needs are so that we can get those few moments, that we can use the skill of microdosing, of taking 2-3 minutes, whatever it is that we need, sometimes a little bit longer if we can, but to nurture ourselves, to take care of ourselves, to also make sure the self-supervisory comments, which I have to tell you, I think that one might be my favorite, of not waiting for someone else to notice that we did something well, but congratulating ourselves when we get something right, when we do something right. And again, the bar can be very low. Like I said, for me, the big accomplishment was not only did I wash the sheets, but I put them back on the bed. Like that was a big accomplishment. My kids were making fun of me that I told them, you know, I'm supposed to be speaking about relationships and about, you know, taking care of ourselves. And for me, for the first, I honestly want to say 6 weeks of this whole craziness, my goals for the day, I mean, aside from the obvious ones of like, you know, keeping the house somewhat functional, but my personal, make my bed in the morning, floss my teeth before I go to bed. And I'm not joking when I say that was 6 weeks. I felt like that was about all I could handle. That was it. I couldn't take on anything else. In the last few weeks, I have tried to do a little bit of exercise, and really that's only because I have a daughter who's making me do it. But it's okay if your goal is, I mean, flossing my teeth. Now I'm generally a teeth flosser. I don't think Maury Levy's on here, but you know, if I was really tired, if I had a really hard day, okay, so I didn't do it. I found something, I know this sounds ridiculous, but I'm sharing it with you in the hopes that maybe it'll help somebody else. I felt like during the day where I didn't accomplish, I don't know, 10 out of the 12 items on my list, I got 2 things done. But at least when I got into bed at night, I could say, but you flossed your teeth. You got into a bed that you made and you flossed your teeth. And that was like my self-nurturing. That was my self-care. I took it up a notch. You know, I started to try to exercise, not so consistently, but I'm trying. And like I was moisturizing my hands before I went to sleep. Like those were my big accomplishments, but it just felt like something. It felt like I was doing something for myself. So don't aim so high. We talked about keeping Hashem inside our circle with us so that we don't feel like we're alone. The very idea, honestly, the word tikva, which I think we are all really, we're thinking about, this idea of hope that this is going to end. But the idea that we have tikva comes from the language of kav, a rope, a line, which lets us know that we are not hanging by, you know, we're not just hanging suspended in midair, that we're attached to a rope, to a kav, and we have a source, that Hashem is there. There was someone there who was looking out for us. God has our back, even when we don't always feel it, but he does. So that's the source of tikva. That's our source of hope, as well as the idea that tikva is also the same language as mikveh, right? Or yikavu hamayim, let the waters be gathered. And I think this is something that I feel every time I have the privilege of being on a Zoom call and seeing people's faces and names, is that what gives us hope often is the gathering, right? That's really what a mikvah is, a gathering of water. Yikavu hamayim from the pasuk in Breshit, is God says, let the waters be gathered into this space that I'm going to call oceans, right? So our source of hope is the fact that we are connected to our Creator, that we're not just like logs floating down a river, right? That someone out there is holding on to us, and that we have each other. That in our gathering together, that we know we're going to get through this, and we will, God willing, all come out of this on the other side. How we get there might be very different, but that God willing, the notion that we have each other is something that will give us strength and allow us to get to the other side. You know, we mentioned also just in our relationships with each other, trying not to zoom in on the annoying parts, try to zoom out on the annoying and zoom in on the positive, so that we don't get oisgezumt in other ways in our lives. The microdosing also in our relationships, not just as we care for ourselves, but also in how we express love for the people around us, whether we're living with them or not living with them, some in our homes, outside our homes, but just the capacity to take a couple of short, quick minutes and doing our best to express love and connection in that way. And we spoke about just trying to respond to bids, that is really an amazing investment to make in our relationships, just knowing that we're there for each other, that we want to be there for each other, even if we can't do what the other person wants us to do, but just the response, the paying attention, the acknowledgement. So much I think of what we're experiencing is that we really all need a lot of validation. So if we need it, so do other people in our lives. So if we want to make sure we get it, we've got to give it to ourselves. We talked a lot about validating our emotions, but we have to do that for each other. And that's true in our friendships. It's true in our families. My sincere hope and prayer is that, God willing, we will gather in person very soon. All of us with different stories to tell and different ways that we came through this and managed this. I think the very fact that you are on this call means that you are doing quite well. Even if it doesn't feel that way, there is something just incredibly amazing to me about people whose eyes are still open and functional at 9:30 past 9:30 at night. So I'm very grateful to you for signing on. I'm super grateful to Adina for making this happen. I hope that something I shared tonight resonates with you the way it did with me. And I just wish us all continued good health and strength, that we continue to love each other and be there for each other, and that we can hopefully continue to learn together in person sometime very soon. I wish you all a beautiful
Thank you
evening.
very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rifki.
So good to see you.
Thank you so much.
Happy
You
birthday,
so
Yael.
much. You're amazing. Thank you.
Thank you so much. If anybody wants any links or any information or any of the stuff I quoted, I'll be happy to send it to you.
Across the generations, you've been amazing. Thank you.
Linda, I love you.
I love you too, sweetheart. You will.
You're really
Thank
amazing.
you, Rifki. That was really
Thank
very
you.
meaningful. Thank
Beautiful.
you.
Renee, I didn't know that was you, where you're like incognito in a baseball hat like me.
Oh, no, you're beautiful. You are so beautiful. Oh, my gosh.
Yes, in my sweatshirt. I didn't change. I thought, you know what? I'm going to wear my stained sweatshirt. You can all see me in a stained sweatshirt. It's just fine.
Looks good to me.
It was clean when I put it on this morning.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you, Rifki. Have a nice evening.
Thank
Have a good
you.
evening.
You too. So nice to see you. Thank you for joining. Thank you so much.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
I feel like I'm looking at you and waving. None of you know who I'm looking at, but I'm looking at
Lila
you.
Dove. Lila Dove.
Have a good night. Thank you, everybody.
Good night.
Thank
Be
you
well.
very much.
Stay safe.
Go
Stay
floss. Go
healthy.
floss, Rifki. Go floss.
Go floss.
I floss now too every night. No matter how tired I am, I floss.
It's
Why?
ridiculously empowering. I know it sounds dumb, but I'm feeling like a real grown-up.
No, because I get the dentist appointment. I'm so nervous. I'm so nervous to ruin my teeth.